This week's book was one of my church book club pick. How to Say Babylon by Safiya Sinclair is a breathtaking memoir about language control, pressure of religious beliefs, identity, and the painful, powerful journey toward freedom. It's lyrical, deeply personal, and one of the most interesting and informative books I have ever read. So, according to Google, and I'm going to give you this information as a backdrop to the story. But according to Google, Rastafari is a monolithic movement centered on Jah, a single God viewed as the Holy Trinity whose spirit resides in every human being. The key spiritual concepts are I and I, which expresses the spiritual interconnectedness of all people, and the contrast between Zion, which is the African Ethiopian as a spiritual promised land, and Babylon, which is oppressive, corrupt Western societal systems. So Rastan life or levity encompasses specific practices. Sacramental cannabis is ritually smoked for meditation and spiritual enlightenment. The Ital diet, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, is a natural, often strictly vegetarian or vegan diet to keep the body clean. Followers avoid alcohol, tobacco, coffee, and processed foods. Many Rastas wear dreadlocks, which are inspired by the Nazarite vow in the Old Testament. And then there's groundations, or communal meetings for chanting, drumming, reasoning, and communing. So the movement began after the 1930s coronation of Haile LaSalle, I or one, I'm not sure. I apologize. Which is viewed as fulfilling a prophecy by Pan-Africanist leader Marcus Garvey. Rastafari gained international recognition in the late 20th century, largely due to the cultural impact of reggae music from devoted followers such as Bob Marley. Now on to How to Say Babylon. After a quick history lesson, in this memoir, Safiya Sinclair reflects on her childhood growing up in Jamaica under the strict authority of her Rastafarian father, a man whose love was often tangled with fear, rigidity, and control. From an early age, Safiya is taught to see the outside world as Babylon, a corrupt system filled with danger, temptation, and moral decay. Her father creates strict rules around how the women in the family dress, speak, learn, and exist, shaping her world through both ideology and intimidation. But even with those limitations, education becomes her pathway to freedom. Safiya falls in love with books, poetry, and storytelling. Through literature, she begins imagining a life beyond fear, a life where she can define herself instead of being defined by someone else's rules. As she grows older, the tension between obedience and selfhood intensifies. With support from her mother, Safiya learns to navigate family loyalty, cultural expectations, education, emotional abuse, and the difficult process of claiming her own voice. The memoir traces her path from silence to expression, from confinement to liberation, while also painting a vivid portrait of Jamaica and womanhood. This memoir is extraordinary. Safiya Sinclair writes with the precision of a poet, which she is a great poet, and the emotional clarity of someone who has fought hard to understand her own story. What struck me the most is how honestly she writes about her father's control, not just physical control, but psychological and spiritual control. The memoir captures the complicated reality of loving someone who is also causing harm and the emotional confusion that comes with trying to untangle yourself from that dynamic. I loved how important education becomes part of the story. Poetry, reading, and education are not just hobbies. They are acts of rebellion and, most importantly, survival. And beneath all of the pain, there is a tremendous resilience. Safiya's journey toward freedom feels hard-earned, layered, and deeply inspiring. This book was more than just a memoir. I felt like it was a testimony. For my rating, this book is a 5 out of 5 stars. It is 352 pages and 16 hours and 46 minutes. Bye.